Hello everyone and welcome to Maximum Attack Rallying and this week's rally video. This week, I must say, has been a little bit of a downer, hasn't it? Well, obviously we had the excitement of Monza last weekend and I talked about that in the video last Sunday. This week things seem quiet, don't they? Very, very quiet indeed. We've had little bits of news. Obviously the teams have started their testing for Monte Carlo already, which is only a few weeks away, which is very exciting, and hopefully, touch wood, we'll see a relatively normal Monte Carlo rally. I don't know what the situation is going to be in terms of spectators and the like, but fingers crossed things are starting to look a little bit better with vaccines and the like, so hopefully we'll see a moderately normal start to the 2021 championship, and hopefully that will continue. A couple of things I just wanted to touch on this week. Today, incidentally, I have been lucky enough to test drive the new Toyota GR Yaris, which was very interesting. I'm not going to tell you too much about that at the moment because I'm going to do a dedicated video on that later in the week. So you'll have to wait a little bit, I'm afraid, to see what I think of it. But it was a very interesting experience nonetheless. So I was very pleased to finally get to test drive one. Obviously, with COVID and everything, it's been very difficult to test drive anything. So that was very interesting. Whether I have one or not, I think, is a different question. But as I say, that's a topic for another day. I will do a dedicated video on that car because I think it deserves a bit of time and a bit of explanation. So that's something to look forward to, hopefully later this week. Also, I wanted to talk a little bit about how things are looking. As I say, we've got Monty testing going on, and just have a little bit of a think about what 2021 might bring for us. The significant change for 2021 will be tyres. So we're moving to a Pirelli tyre from Michelin. So that's going to potentially throw up some complexity. Obviously, we saw the Pirelli gravel tyre being tested in Italy with Petter Solberg and Andreas Mikkelsen. It was just a bit of a demo run, but it's going to be interesting to see how that tyre develops. I must say, on the subject of tyres, I think it's a bit of a shame that we have a single tyre supplier, because if you look back to when we had multiple suppliers, you had a bit of a variance in there. You had a bit of jeopardy because you didn't really know whose tyre was going to work the best. Subaru were on Pirellis, others were on Michelin's, and it seemed that on different events, different tyres worked better, and that threw a little bit of an unknown into the championship, which I kind of miss. And I'm always a little bit reluctant when you have a control tyre or a controlled supplier for anything. And I know this isn't particularly relevant at WRC Rally 1 because they're all works teams with loads of money, but I think when you have a control supplier, you can risk being in a position of having of that item, whatever it is, be it a tyre or even a complete car, being quite expensive. So I think having that little bit of competition from multiple suppliers adds an extra dimension, and I think we do miss that, perhaps. We're very lucky at the moment, of course, that the cars are very evenly matched generally, and we are seeing very good competition, but I would perhaps like to see an extra tyre supplier in there. Obviously, when we had DMAC, we saw Elfyn Evans take his first win at Rally GB because they had a tyre that worked very well in those conditions, and it threw a bit of a spanner into the works, didn't it? So I kind of missed that, really. But it's going to be interesting, isn't it, to see how those Pirelli tyres perform, and if there is any significant difference to the Michelins that we've had for the last few years. So that's interesting. I think the other big story for me is driver lineups. In terms of the two big teams, Toyota and Hyundai, things look rather fixed. We've had the announcement that the third Hyundai will be shared between Danny Sordo and Craig Breen, which is eminently sensible. Sebastian Loeb, I think his time in the championship was done. It was nice to see him come back, and it was nice to see him be moderately successful and have that a little bit of that magic back. But I think really it's better for the sport if we have that seat open to new drivers. Danny Sordo is obviously not a new driver, he's one of the most experienced drivers, but for a third car that's a good thing from Hyundai's perspective, because it brings that level of experience and backup on some events where Tanak and Neuville are perhaps more likely to go off the road fighting for a championship, or fighting for a rally win, whereas Sordo can take a more measured approach and bring that stability of point scoring, but also enough pace to win rallies, which he's clearly capable of doing. And weirdly, now he's stepped back into this part-time role, I would say he's probably driving better than he's ever driven before, so that's very interesting. Additionally, it also means that we can have a new driver getting some opportunity. Craig Breen isn't the newest driver and obviously has some experience in World Rally cars with Citroën as well as Hyundai, but that's a great opportunity for Craig, and I think Craig has driven really well this year. Had a great result in Estonia, and he's been driving the MRF tyres backed Hyundai R5 in the European Championship, and he's been doing a really good job, and not just this year. So I think for him to now get a bigger program is really, really important, and I hope he takes advantage of that and can continue to develop. The bigger story really though with drivers is obviously M Sport, who have yet to confirm their lineup for 2021. As I said in my video last week, I mean, how does that look? Will they even bother? I mean, I think you could make an argument, a very sensible argument, for them to just sit out next year and focus on building the hybrid car for 2022. I mean, you could also make an argument that they probably shouldn't bother building a hybrid car and just focus on customer cars for Rally 2 and 3 and 4, but hopefully that won't be the case, and hopefully we will see them come back stronger. Hopefully that shift in regulations for 22 will give them a bit of a leg up again. Obviously, when we saw the current cars appear in 2017, the Fiesta was probably the best car, not necessarily ultimately the fastest car, but it was the most broadly capable car, which gave them 2 championships. So that was very good. I think their driver lineup for next year is very interesting. Obviously, Lappi confirmed at the end of Monza that said at the end of Monza that he won't be back next year because they're not going to pay him. I believe the understanding was that he was being paid by Citroën still for this year, so M Sport didn't need to pay him. Now he's at a point where Citroën are no longer paying him, and M Sport are not really in a position to pay the salary that a driver of his calibre would expect. So unfortunately, we lose Lappi. If I was to make a change, being a virtual team boss, which would be an absolute disaster, if I was to make a change to the M Sport lineup, I don't think Lappi is the person that I would be changing. I think he was beginning to grow into the car, considering its slight performance deficit to the others. And it's a real shame. I think he is a real loss to the championship. That leaves 2 drivers that are not confirmed, but not confirmed, if that makes sense. Gus Greensmith and Timo Sunonen. Whether we see them both back, I'm not sure. I think Greensmith is very much developing still. He's not got loads of experience in the car, and he just needs to keep doing events and see how the pace builds. I think he had a disappointing Monza rally. How 21 looks for him, I don't know. Whether he'll do a full programme. And as for Sunonen, again, there's been flashes of pace, but again, there's been disappointment. Monza was a bad rally for Sunonen, but it wasn't his fault. It was, a technical problem with the car, so we can't blame him for that. But I think for me, he has perhaps not quite delivered on the early pace that we saw, and that for me would be a concern for M Sport going forward. It very much depends on the complete lineup, doesn't it? And who ends up in that 3rd car, presuming Sunonen and Greensmith remain. There is obviously a lot of talk of Adrian Fourmeau taking that seat. He has again had a very good year. He's put in very good performances in the Rally 2 Fiesta. Was going very well at Monza. Was the fastest in WRC 3 really. Until his problem. He's quite inexperienced to be in a World Rally car, but I mean, we say that, and traditionally, if you look back, experience has been very important. But then you look at someone like Kalle Rivera, who's jumped into the Toyota and has been moderately competitive. So I think he is a possible. It's a shame, isn't it? Because when you look at the other drivers out there, your Mickelsons, Tiedemans, you've got a lot of very patterns as well. You've got a lot of very talented drivers out there who probably deserve a shot at a full season in a World Championship car. The problem you've got is that the Ford is now not really quite on the same level as the other cars. It did go well in Monza. They did put in some good times. But I think it is fair to say that the Yaris and the i20 have now moved a step up. So 2021 is going to be a difficult year for whoever is in the Fiesta. For me, I think I would like to see a little bit of a wild card in that car. If you... Formo, I think, would be a very interesting person to see in it. But for me, Solberg, I think, if we could have Oliver Solberg in that car, or even if it was only for a handful of events, that for me would be something really special, because he has shown incredible pace for obvious reasons, and I think that would be a fantastic story to see him in that car, even if it was just for 3 or 4 rounds. So I think I don't necessarily see that happening. I think that's a bit wishful thinking. I think he will continue as he is, just learning, which isn't a bad thing. But yeah, I think for me, just for M Sport to be able to slot someone into that car and just see what they could do, I think would be really interesting. It's going to be a difficult year for them. They're not... COVID has had a big impact. It's had a big impact on their ability to test the car. Budgetary constraints for them are much bigger than they are for Toyota and for Hyundai. So it's been a difficult year, and I don't unfortunately see any reason why 21 will be any easier. Particularly, well, it'll be a little bit easier if we're doing all the events, but it's not going to be easy for them. So I think that's a bit of a shame, but I think we're going to have to, from their perspective, we have to look at the 2022 reset when we move to the new regulations. So yeah, so it's quiet outside of testing, but there's a lot happening in a way, and we're kind of waiting for some confirmation on driver lineups and things. So there's interesting times ahead. We've had a lot of support for Monza Rally this week following the event. As I said last week, I actually think it was really good. Yes, the weather really helped it. If it had been dry, I don't think we would have had anything like the excitement that we had. But it was a very exciting event, and I think it shows the potential for events like that. Yes, I don't think you should have a 3 and a bit day rally where so much of it is based at the circuit, but I think having one day out of the rally at the circuit would be very good. And I think if you imagine what Monza had been like had it been full of spectators, I think that would have been a fantastic event. And I think we have to always be conscious of bringing rallying to the people and putting it in front of people and promoting it. And if you can have an easy to access event, or at least a good chunk of event that is easy to access, you're helping on that cause. So I think for me, I would agree with the positive review of Monza. I think we just have to be a little bit cautious of not spending too much time in that environment. You have to have the roads outside of a circuit environment, or whatever, a spectator friendly environment you choose, to give the rally some real substance, to make it a proper World Championship type rally. But I think you also have to be a little bit cautious of the venue you choose, because if you do it in the middle of summer when it's dry and sunny, and I think you risk losing a little bit of the drama that we saw at Monza. So for me, I would consider Monza, but it would have to be in a late or early slot. But I would also be looking at some of the other venues that we had on the list for this year. An IPA. I think IPA would make a fantastic WRC event, because while it's a closed road event, it's still very accessible, very compact, and I think that does add something, even if it upsets the traditionalists who still think rallying a WRC event should be 5 days and 1 billion kilometres. But I think we have to modernise, and we have to go with the times, and I think you have to find a compromise. So I think that's about it for this week. It was a bit all over the place because we're obviously in the holding period between seasons, but thanks again for watching, and I hope you did enjoy it. As always, as I say, there is going to be a video coming on the GR Yaris, just a little bit of my experience based on having test driven one, so I'll try and get that out later this week. But for now, thanks for watching. Please stay tuned, please like and subscribe and follow and all that social media rubbish, and I will catch you again very soon.